sweet.
You listen, I'm telling you something.
When are you going to give up on her?
I can't. I tried so hard, but I can't.
This is a production where a good producer has done most of the legwork ahead of time and created an environment for the actor-director to make his greatest work.
You can imagine how we felt when we first, on the first day of principal photography. It's the longest journey.
Andre Lamont was our line producer. He was there in Pittsburgh with Ewan all the time, and we've worked very closely with Andre on a number of films. And it was a wonderful collaboration with Ewan MacGregor.
They gave me great freedom to explore and allowed me to concentrate on the creative aspect of my work and not the political stuff, to give me that freedom.
If we held there, we would just cut back to this here, right?
Ewan MacGregor and his team did such a good job of giving us the pastoral feeling of American pastoral. This is the dream. This is what you came to America for.
Let's remember the energy. America had won the war. The Depression was over. Sacrifice was over.
You feel tremendously valued when the director reaches out. It's a pretty good idea when the material is difficult or challenging. Ewan's sense was that what was in this material and what was in this book was so great and important that together he wanted the literary help of unearthing it for the screen.
Martin Rouet, the cinematographer, was a world-class cinematographer who collaborated uniquely and very closely with Ewan.
It's a wonderful novel, and the screenplay was just amazing. And working with Ewan MacGregor was great.
I wanted him to be the DP because I needed somebody that could really help me with storytelling.
Ewan, another thing to look at could be like this.
I've spent my life looking at the camera. I found with Martin, it was very funny. Whenever we were describing things, I was always getting it backwards. And I realized it's because for 25 years I've been thinking this way towards the camera, not thinking from the camera towards me. And I had to sort of turn my brain around in order to think the other way around, you know. But he was incredibly patient with me. It'll still work when we shoot it around like this for the big singers. Okay, good.
He's in 95% of all scenes. I'm just amazed how he can do both jobs with the commitment he has.
Good? Happy? I think we should move on. That's great. Those two good ones.
So we sat down a lot before we started shooting, and we planned a lot.
That's quite cool too. Okay, good. I think that's great.
I wanted it to be very classical. I love movies that are still, and I'm not crazy about crane shots. I mean, we do have one or two, but they're not crane shots as we know. And he always ribbed me about that, Martin, because I made that decision before he arrived.
Oh, does it? And it's the opposite now.
There's one big division in the film, which is when the bomb goes off. From then on, everything gets more crisp and sharper, and all the nice things go away a little bit, and contrast increases because everything changes for Sweet. And we wanted to take the journey of the Sweet.
In a film like this, I didn't want the camera swinging around, and we use Steadicam now and again, but again, even that is quite classical. I love it when the acting's allowed to happen in the frame. It's not too cutty.
Have you had a nice time here?
With you? Terrible.
We worked closely with the production design. We had a lot of conversations with costume design, hair and makeup. They were very strong, so everything falls into place really nicely.
My idea for it was always for it to be colourful and vibrant and alive and strong colours in the beginning, because we set up the American pastoral world, this family, the American dream, post-war hope, and then after the bomb, for those colours to drain out of the film.
I based everything on a certain artist, Edward Hopper. His color palette is like picture perfect for what we're doing. His paintings on factories and city life, and his loneliness in his palette.
The nearer we get to the end, the more sort of monochromatic it becomes. Hopper was Dan's inspiration, and he brought the very famous Hopper painting of a row of buildings, and this burnt red, brown green shutters, there's a bit of yellow, there's a sort of Hopper-esque colours in it. And that became our sort of Bible. And you can see it through the film, the sort of dark, burnt brown, reddy brown, and green.
Color theory is so important to me. So when you start off happier and brighter, and it's the end of the war, colors come alive. So the colors were brighter reds, brighter yellows, brighter, blues. You can introduce oranges. It shows happiness. And then with decline, you start showing more grays and browns start coming in, and aging of everything and dusting age. And it just shows those colors that used to be bright are now getting dusted out and grayed out. There's a lot based on brick, all based on factories of the 30s and 40s. Then I started throwing browns and grays in there to show the aging and then the decay. You'll see the much more blues start coming into it when the 60s start happening and the violence starts happening, just showing the decline of the American dream.
We shot in Pittsburgh. It was a really good place to shoot. A lot of it still is very useful for the 60s and 70s in a way that it's harder and harder to find period streets that haven't been gentrified.
Look at that, men out of work. Didn't used to see that, not in this city.
The Newark-made glove factory by far is my favorite, just based on that it's a period set. It's extremely detailed. We just showed the aging of the machines and aging of everything, the lamps, and everything starts going grayer and dustier. And our challenge was to do it all in one day on a lot of things, from it's fresh in 45, and then back to the 60s. Working on a period picture is a production designer's dream. We collaborated with Martin, our DP, especially with color shades on all our lamps. You'll see it going from the warmers, more natural colors, to colder and grayer. Even with the lighting, he wanted to test every light, which is great, because then you know exactly what your look is going to be, and it shows what your colors are. Collaborated a ton with Lindsay, our costume designer. She showed me her palette, and I'm like, nailed it.
My most favorite color palette reference is Edward Hopper. And it was like, yes. I was like, we're on the same page.
I loved working with Lindsay McKay. For her to produce the clothes that she did for us all to wear, including all the background, I don't know how she did it. I really don't.
I could just see him in the suede. And then we talked a little bit about the direction and the simplicity of the costume. It's such a heavy subject matter that it's not about what they're wearing. It was much more about texture, tailoring, simplicity, to not take away from the dialogue and the subject matter.
I gotta hand it to anybody who's got the guts to wear that shirt and those pants.
Of course, it is period film, but I don't want it to look like one or feel like one. And she managed to do that with the costumes. They're there and they're absolutely correct. But there's something very real about them and lived in, and we don't feel like the clothes are in your face.
We show him in his perfect life. And when you get to the very end of the film, he's in a lot of light grays, sort of things that wash him out. He's being washed out as a human being. So we sort of represent that. He gets drained and drained and drained, but always tailored.
The Swede's always in a suit. He was a businessman in the 50s, 60s. So I had 4 suits that she had built for me. But she managed to do it with just 4 suits. So I had a suit built for our only scene in the 40s, and it was a very key scene. I had a sort of blue suit for the 50s, late 50s, that I also was able to use in some of the 60s scenes, a grey suit, which was more of a sort of 60s suit, and then there was a 70s suit for the art gallery scene at the end.
I like the hair in this period.
70s?
Yeah, I think it's a good change. I didn't see that before, but that's really...
Yeah, we haven't done it before. This is the first 70s scene.
Yeah, no.
And the rest was done with clothes that she'd pulled from vintage clothes shops, and she put together this incredible wardrobe. I did go away with quite a few of my hats, but they're beautiful. And they were sort of built to fit my head, so fair enough.
Ewan took every single hat.
You can't direct your first film and steal a few hats, you know. When can you steal a few hats?
I loved how much he loved his hats, and I love Ewan. He's just like one of the greatest human beings I've ever met. So the fact that it makes him happy and he's gonna wear them, that's also very important too.
For Dawn, the wardrobe is really important to her character because she and the Swede had to represent this kind of like golden couple.
This is America. Newark is in America.
When we really introduce them and their family, things are good and everything's good with her, and she's this farm girl, and there was a big transition because as things begin to deteriorate, she's completely drained when you see her in the sanatorium. All the color's been taken out, but we put the color back in post-facelift, and she's the only one that we allowed to have colors. And these colors that we used on her, they were angrier, like richer colors that we wouldn't see her wearing in the 50s.
How do you capture that in the changing periods without it taking you out of the story? And I think that she handled that really beautifully.
Miserable prick.
Mary, stop.
Mary, that's a, that was a wild character to sort of represent.
Mary disappears after the bombing, and when we see her next, she has become a Jane. You wear a veil to do no harm to the organisms in the air.
I renounce all sexual pleasure with either gods or men, all taking of anything not given.
The mask that she wore was a big deal, and it couldn't have happened easier. When I had Dakota in for a quick fitting in Los Angeles, we just sort of were messing around with pantyhose and the way that it sat on her face, and we made some of them a little dirty. There was something about making her look vulnerable and cold.
Daddy, how much suffering do you want?
Dakota was a little bit of like vintage shops. The Jane look was, it was kind of from maybe some Salvation Army. And then the funeral we were able to find some pieces at a Goodwill, Salvation Army.
The beautiful Miss New Jersey mother for winning the handsome father. This is about our looks?
Jennifer Connely had 35 costume changes. Ewan had 45. I welcomed the challenge. I mean, I think that's what, as a costume designer, why projects like this are so amazing and once in a lifetime.
The creative collaboration was incredibly satisfying and exhilarating. When you start talking with these amazing people, talented people, about how you see the film and everyone's input, and then out of it comes something that's greater than all of our ideas. It's an amazing thing to see.
Nothing wrong with that little girl. Her mind goes too fast for her tongue, that's all. There, I just saved you the money you're going to give to the shrink, because that's all there is to it.
We just want to help her, Dad.
The novel explores, I suppose, the death of something, and the death is maybe of the American dream, of the post-war American experience, the destruction of that by the 60s, by Vietnam. So I've always just taken it very simply as that. This is the American dream we're exploring, and what happened to it.
What Mary blew up with that bomb of hers was nothing less than his life.
When Roth wrote his 60s novel, and we make our 60s movie, it goes to being human, it goes to being a parent, it goes to having a family.
It raises some interesting questions about that time, that very particular time in America's history, where there was that promise, and it was after the war, and everything seemed bountiful. And what happened in that transition in the 1960s, and you sort of see it play out through this family.
Doesn't anybody care?
Of course people care. This film is saying that nothing is perfect, you know what I mean? Like, you can have a great job, a wonderful wife, a beautiful daughter, a nice home, parents that love you, and things still go wrong.
This is a story about a family whose daughter becomes a terrorist. And that did occur in the late 60s with young men and women who were protesting the Vietnam War, and they were rallying against the government or against the hierarchy of society. What you certainly see now, though, is you see a younger generation of young men and women that have become terrorists. The rallying cry may be different than protesting the Vietnam War, but it is something that one can relate to.
You're not anti-war, you're anti-everything!
Even though it's a period movie, it feels very in touch with today.
They don't believe in peace or war or the Vietnamese people. They just wanted to blow a hole in the world. The biggest hole they could, and everything that was good.
The Swede spends his entire life trying to get Mary back, and he never gives up. On the day he died, he's still thinking about it. So he didn't get her back the way he wanted to, but that never stopped him.
His feelings for his daughter are so deep that it's impossible for him to do anything but what he's done, which is go and search for her.
This girl, she could lead us to Mary.
He hasn't seen her in all that time, but the dynamic of their relationship still hasn't changed. She looks terrible. You know, she's emaciated. She has a scarf over her face. She has scars. She has broken teeth. She admits that she's been raped. The way it's portrayed by Ewan and Dakota is, even though he recognizes her visage, of what she looks like and how terrible it is, he still speaks to her like she's Mary.
Come home with me, Mary.
She knows that she can never be the the girl that he wants her to be so desperately. So to save him from that pain, she wants him to sort of move on and live his life. But on the other hand, some might say that that's kind of selfish. You know, how can you expect your father to leave you, you know, after not knowing where you are?
You go, Daddy.
Leave you? You think I could leave you? After everything
You
I've...
must. That's exactly what you must do.
It's the love of a parent that's unwavering and unequivocal, no matter what. And in the end, it's her love for her father.
The movie is about unconditional love. And where does unconditional love exist? I do believe it exists in its finest form within a family. And in this instance, it exists between the father and the daughter. There's no question that the father will always love his daughter through thick and thin, and the daughter has equal feelings for her father.
Roth tells us to say, it's in the book, in the screenplay, and on the screen, life had taught him the worst lesson it has to teach, which is that it makes no sense. And the things that happen to us, the suffering of our daughter and our wife and ourselves, and the dreams we had, and justly had, as a young person in America, with all it has to offer, have turned into dust in front of us.
Go home, Mr. Lvov. This is my daughter.
And there is no good reason you can look to. There is no answering moral code which you betrayed and therefore got yourself there. That's worse news than discovering it's your fault.
The Swede spends a great deal of his time trying to find out why it's his fault. Why am I to blame? What did I do? It's when I kissed her in the car. It's when she saw the monk burning on the television. These are the reasons why she became what she became. For me, Roth is saying, there's no reason why she did what she did. She did what she did because that's what she did.
Coincidence, that's all.